Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Chris Collier. I am the host of Conquer with Chris, the podcast you don't want to miss. Today I have a very tremendous guest, Kristen Schneider. Kristen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Tell them a little bit about yourself so they can know where you're from and kind of what you do.
Well, I am up just outside of Cleveland, Ohio. So
Cleveland rocks.
yeah,
Oh,
that's pretty much what everybody knows. And I own Coffee Break Marketing, which is my marketing agency focused on building audiences and platforms for people who are building some kind of movement. We usually end up focusing around expertise in teaching, which we'll kind of talk about why when we dive into what I did before.
were you a teacher?
I might have been, yes. So yeah, that's what we do. Anything tech and copywriting, helping people get that up and running. That's us.
Great. Well, since we talked about coffee break marketing, let's go back before it started and talk about the process and how you got to there.
Oh, it was an interesting one. So I went to college, like I said, to be a teacher. I was supposed to be a music ed teacher. About 3 years in, I took an introduction to special education course because you had certain things you had to take to get your licensure. Loved that, switched my major, did special education instead. And then I taught for about 5 years. And by year 2 or 3, I had started my business officially. I had done some side hustle stuff in college and out of it, but I was going to be a wedding dress designer. I had been sketching dresses forever. I was sewing things out of my home, took on alterations, everything like that. And that's what I did. I did that for years. I started an independent fashion designer group where I was helping people with their marketing and setting up trade shows for that. We were in New York City. I planned shows. It was fun. I loved it. I loved the wedding industry. But in the midst of that, I still kept falling in love with the marketing part. So eventually I ended up closing up my bridal store, shutting down the wedding side, and being full-time in what had slowly developed into a marketing consultancy and agency without me really realizing it when it had started. And that was a few years ago. So now we're here doing what we do.
How did you get the name Coffee Time?
So that came from part of what we do is strategy, and part of what we do is done for you. But regardless, the goal is that you can get it done in the amount of time of a coffee break. So I played with ideas like 15-minute marketing or 60-minute marketing. But honestly, I have coffee every day. I actually hated coffee for a long time. So I find it kind of amusing that this is the business that I have now. But I have coffee every day, whether I have to basically throw it back in 60 seconds and rush out the door, or if I get to make it foamy and sit down and sip it for 45 minutes to an hour, I make time for it because I want to, like it's part of my day and it's part of my system. So that's the thought process with the marketing that we help our especially our clients who are learning from us and doing DIY system is whether you can only show up for 5 minutes or if you have an hour and a half set aside, there's something you could do to move the needle. So that's why we settled on coffee break.
Gotcha. And so in your experience, you've had to do a lot of pivoting, I see, from teaching from music, being a music teacher, special ed teacher, to bridal, to design, to coffee break marketing. So help the people understand the techniques and things that caused you to pivot and how that did and help you become who you are today.
Yeah, it's funny because it's one of those things where you can let yourself feel bad for it, to be honest, if you allow yourself to, because I like to do new things and I love to be curious, and it can lead to feeling like you can't stay focused. But I've learned that, like you said, the pivoting, the creativity, that curiosity, I am the person who, you pick up my computer, you'll find 55 tabs of like, I click a link and then I click a link and then I click a link because I'm trying to see what people are talking about, kind of then I get an idea and I go for it. And what I found is that if you can embrace that creativity in the end is beneficial, as long as you're willing to stick it to some kind of discipline as well. That's made a huge difference for me. And I mean, I know, we're talking about this at the end of 2020, the ability to think on your feet and pivot. I think everybody has had to practice over the last 15 months. That being okay with that creativity. And I found a place where I get to do it over and over again and still stay focused. I get to brainstorm everybody else's business while keeping in the framework I've made for myself and my own. So the marketing was really like a sweet spot for me because I was able to be curious every time we have a new client. but not constantly change my own business. So that was
That's
nice.
smart. That's so smart. So you get your curiosity out, like, excuse the expression, your lust for curiosity out of the way, and you deal with that, but then you stay in the same familiar framework of your own business. So that way you're satisfying that regularity that you need to.
Yes. Yeah. That to be consistent in income, to be consistent for my team. Because to be honest, not very many people like having to learn things over and over again. as that's not seen as a plus when you're trying to do your job description. And it does, as a teacher, I can recognize the benefits of a framework that work with the way people learn. I think you and I had actually chatted about that a little bit. Now I can have a framework that I very carefully devised, but we can plug creativity into it for new ideas and people. And it's a nice meeting point.
So really what you do, you have your framework that you operate in to create other people's framework so they can operate how they need to operate in their business. That's really what you.
Yeah, and
right?
It's a blast. Yeah. So I get to talk about it with somebody who's a pediatrician, and then I get to talk to somebody who's running eco-friendly paddle tours and somebody who does SEO. They're all so drastically different, but they're all trying to teach. Like I said, it's not just any industry. Those are people who are kind of standing up as leaders and thought-provoking movements within their individual industry too.
Let's say someone's just starting out and they think they have something that they think they have a niche, a passion, a purpose to bring a teaching to. What would be your first advice to them?
Don't try to teach everything at once. A lot of times when people have that urge, like you said, it's because they care a lot about whatever it is they care about. And that's good, because that's what will let you be effective. That's what will let you make change, is that you care that much. But when we care that much, we forget a couple things. One, while it seems like second nature to know the things we know, other people probably haven't read, watched, thought about any of the stuff that you have read, watched, and thought about for however long you've cared. And then two, you have to work with how people learn. And if you really want to make lasting change, you need it to stick. So you have to take people step by step. So yes, maybe you want to shift the way that the food chain works across, an entire continent, but you can't do that in one product, one package, one whatever. Right.
That reminds me of a story I heard about. There were three preachers at a funeral, and one of them was speaking. The other two were sitting on stage. And the one goes to the other, and he didn't know they were friends. The one that's speaking, the one he was talking to his friends, he said, I know he wants to preach the everlasting gospel, but all of it today, it's kind of like we get that verbal diarrhea, right? We just feel like we have to share everything right now so we can get everybody on board. I've got good news and bad news. Good news is everybody's not going to be on board. Bad news, everybody's not going to be on board. I don't care how good you are. I don't care how much you know. I don't care how passionate you are. It's not for everybody. Yeah.
And that's another good point, because we see that a lot when they're trying to figure out how to reach the world, right? And you can impact the world without reaching it as a whole, right? So absolutely, you aren't. And if you try to make your message or your plan reach everybody and get them all on board, it just won't work.
I think it'll end up creating a dichotomy in the people that you are trying to reach. The actual dream client of yours, there'll be a dichotomy where they're like, I don't really care for Chris, or I don't really like his message because it's too welcoming. It's not niche. I call it niching down, right? You got to niche the niche even further down to make it just fit a single group of people. If you happen to go outside that group, that's okay. But if you want to hit that group, explain that to the people so they can understand it.
I mean, it's just how humans' brains work, right? Like we look for patterns and we look for things that stand out, and anything that blends in isn't going to get noticed, because survival wise, we didn't need to. So that's one part of it, is that if you don't have something clear for people to latch onto, their subconscious level thinking just moves right past it, because there's other stuff asking for their attention. The second part is, if they do want to pay attention, they need time to make the connections for their brain to really get it down in there. So even if you don't want it to be the only thing you talk about in general, you need to be narrow focused at each individual moment. And then you can add pieces and build a web of things that you present to people and stuff like that. And you mentioned niching down. It really is important, but it doesn't have to just be people. Like I said, I've got clients I've talked to, one person who was in like the construction industry and is now doing leadership stuff. Somebody else is doing pediatrician stuff. I've got kids yoga. The niche is that they need to learn a framework to teach their stuff. So you can have you just have to pick a place to be nugget sized. It doesn't have to be specifically the person or the product or whatever, but one of those you need to get specific on.
That's a good point, because you got to get good at something, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're just out there and you're the old saying, what, jack of all trades, master of none? It's really true. You could know almost everything and not be good at it. And those who getting started, you only have to be this much better than the person who's behind you. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was helping people in the wedding industry, actually, when you were asking about like character traits, I jotted down like giving yourself permission, because every industry I've entered since college, I was obviously qualified to be a teacher. They wouldn't have let me have my degree. But since then, after that, I just started, and that's not unusual in entrepreneurship. So many people do it, but then it eats at like their confidence level. And trust me, it's done that for me as well. But in wedding, I hadn't gone to fashion school, and there are people who have, and they do really great work too. And I didn't get a marketing degree, and there are people who have, and they've done really great work too. But like, I've taken my time to know what I'm doing. But there are plenty of times where I'm not 20 years in to this.
Well, it's like Bill Gates, right? He sold Microsoft before he had a program. So really what you're doing is you're selling yourself before you have whatever it is that you're doing, right? You are XYZ, but maybe not.
Yeah. So it's an interesting process, because it can feel like you're kind of flying by the seat of your pants, but it actually, if you do it the right way, it allows you to be creative and develop and test kind of all at the same time. I mean, if you look at like Pixar, they talk about failing fast there, and just the idea in any business industry about iteration and not trying to take everything to the full end, because you will miss variables anyway. So why get that far and then have to go back and figure out where you went wrong without the full information? So you need certain amounts, right? Like, I couldn't offer email marketing services until I started learning how to use it. We had to know not only how to use the tech, but what worked, and test it on our own systems. And a lot of times we'll do it ourselves first, and then we'll go sell it once we've seen that it's working for us to work when it's marketing stuff. But yeah, I mean, you don't have to be 20 years ahead of people. You just have to be able to get the results that you want to get.
And where can people find you?
So my main website is KristenSchneider.com, but it will be spelled funny, as you and I were talking about my name. So I'm sure that'll be on the notes, but
it'll be on the screen, right?
Yes.
Wow.
Okay. And then other than that, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram and Facebook, all of them pretty regularly, but feel free to find me there. It's Kristen J. Schneider on Facebook and Instagram, because as weird as my name is spelled, somebody else already had it. So
hey, I want to thank my guest, Kristen Schneider, for being on today. And please like, subscribe, and share depending on what platform you're on. Thank you, and have a great day.
I'm always amazed.